All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we are breaking down exactly what it takes to survive the absolute cinematic nightmare that is a B-movie monster island. You know, the setup, right? A group of totally unsuspecting people get stranded, the environment is just relentlessly hostile, and inevitably, there's something huge and incredibly hungry waiting for them in the jungle. But what are the actual mechanics of these survival scenarios? Like, what are the unspoken rules?
Well, to figure that out, we're going to look at two spectacularly campy source texts, Ape Island and They Must Survive an Island of Giant Creatures. By pulling these apart, we can map out all those overlapping tropes, the completely ridiculous plot devices, and the hardcore survival mechanics that define the genre. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to answer one big question. How do completely different groups of people handle the exact same problem of, trying not to get eaten while trapped in a place they literally cannot escape from?
Okay, Section 1, Stranded. The island arrival. Let's get into it. So every great monster island story has to start with an accidental and usually wildly improbable arrival. You definitely can't just book a cruise to these places. The island has to trap you. It cuts you off from the outside world and completely strips away all your modern safety nets. But the way our two groups end up in their respective nightmares, the contrast is just staggering. In Ape Island, we've got a group of students, Greg, Seth, Josh, Sydney, and Danny, who get stranded because of a deceitful class project set up by their professor. It honestly starts off feeling like a totally normal field trip. But our other film? Oh, it goes completely off the rails from minute one. It literally sucks a group of 1865 Union and Confederate Civil War soldiers who are escaping in a hot air balloon, by the way, along with a 2012 passenger airplane straight into a temporal rift over the Bermuda Triangle. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And this setup perfectly captures the sheer narrative chaos of a time-displaced island. The absurdity peaks super early when these displaced 19th century soldiers, led by Union Captain Cyrus Harding, stumble upon the wreckage of the 2012 plane and meet the modern survivors, Jules and Abby. Having literally zero concept of modern aviation, the soldiers just deadpan describe this wrecked airplane as a flying locomotive. It's such a perfect, hilarious example of how the island forces these vastly different realities to just crash into each other.
Moving right along to Section 2, Assembling the Ragtag Survivors.
So here's the crucial thing. Once you're stranded, you have to immediately check off the mandatory B-movie character roster. Because if everyone just got along and made smart, rational decisions, the movie would literally be over in 20 minutes. You absolutely need that maximum internal conflict to distract from the external threats. And both of these films masterfully stock their islands with these highly recognizable archetypes. Over on Ape Island, you've got Greg, this incredibly boastful anthropology student who actually claims he's a super genius on par with Jane Goodall. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, on our time-lost island, you have Pencraft, who is a cowardly Confederate deserter alongside soldiers who are just struggling to comprehend a modern world where, to their absolute shock, a black man is president of the United States. This roster basically guarantees that the group is going to be at each other's throats long before the monsters even show up.
And of course, you gotta have the cannon fodder. Whether it's Josh whining about a hurt ankle on Ape Island and promptly getting dragged off into the dark, or Tom the deserter wandering off into the woods to become a late-night snack for some swamp beasts, the island demands an early sacrifice. It's just a structural necessity for the genre. The narrative literally has to establish the lethal stakes by culling the herd right out of the gate.
All right, Section 3, Monsters and Mutated Beasts.
So, surviving the elements and each other is honestly a walk in the park compared to what is actively hunting them. Let's talk about the threat on Ape Island. Now, you might be expecting some majestic, misunderstood creature. But folks, this is a B-movie. We don't get a calm, protective giant here. Instead, the students discover these massive skulls that point to a highly aggressive, incredibly intelligent, unclassified branch of primates. And they are actively hunting the students in the pitch black, literally hanging their gear up in the trees as these terrifying psychological warnings. It is incredibly bleak.
Meanwhile, the time-traveling island decides to escalate the threat level exponentially. It's not just one species they have to worry about. It's a terrifying buffet of danger. Our survivors are thrown up against stranded, vicious pirates, nocturnal, flesh-eating beasts that literally steal their victims' flip-flops. Yes, you heard that right. And to top the whole shebang off, a massive, ship-crushing giant octopus. The island basically acts as a Bermuda Triangle graveyard, just collecting and mutating the most dangerous things it can find across time.
Which brings us to Section 4, Meeting the Mad Genius. Now, what's really fascinating about this next phase is when our doomed survivors inevitably bump into the actual architect of their misery. Because behind almost every monster island, there's a deeply flawed human intellect, either pulling the strings or suffering the consequences of their own massive hubris. When we compare our two mad geniuses, the contrast is just stark. On one side, we have Professor Hamilton, a deeply unethical academic whose master plan is literally just to get his name in the history books. On the other side, we have the legendary Captain Nemo, a guy whose genuinely noble intentions to stop global warfare accidentally cursed his entire crew. So one is driven by extreme narcissism, and the other by extreme trauma and a staggering miscalculation of basic physics. I mean, Nemo's deadpan delivery of his logic is the absolute pinnacle of B-movie exposition. He calmly explains that to prevent wars, he created a hydrogen-electric reaction, which is essentially nuclear power, inside his submarine, the Nautilus. Okay, fine. But then, when they're attacked by a giant squid in the Bahamas, he casually decides the absolute only logical defensive maneuver is to activate his completely untested time machine. It's such an incredible, wild escalation that perfectly sets up the disaster that follows. Hamilton, on the other hand, he is chillingly grounded in his villainy. Remember those dog tags he handed his students at the start of the trip under the guise of safety? Yeah, those were actually tracking devices. He brought them to the island specifically to act as human bait for the intelligent apes. He views their brutal, screaming deaths not as a horrific tragedy, but just as mere stepping stones to his own academic glory. The guy is a total monster himself. And bouncing back to Nemo, we eventually learn the horrifying truth of his 20-year curse in this timeline. See, that lightning strike didn't just send them through time, it ripped a literal hole in it, stranding them on an island where the intense electromagnetic fields render all modern technology completely useless. And in this incredibly dark twist of fate, we discover that those nocturnal, flesh-eating swamp creatures terrorizing everyone, yeah, they're actually Nemo's own mutated crewmen. They've been driven completely mad by isolation, sunlight sensitivity, and those strange electromagnetic forces. It's tragic, really.
Okay, finally, Section 5, the ridiculous final escape. So with mutated beasts closing in, pirate threats everywhere, and, in the case of our time travelers, an active volcano threatening to bury the entire island in ash, our heroes have to execute an utterly unhinged escape plan. I absolutely love explaining this part because the sheer audacity of this plan is cinematic gold. Because the island's electromagnetic field shorts out all modern electronics, they can't just power up the time machine, right? So what do? They toss a heavy, rudimentary Civil War-era steam engine into a balloon basket, fuel it with highly flammable island bitumen, and intentionally fly it straight into an erupting volcanic ash cloud. Why? To act as a giant lightning rod to jumpstart the temporal rift. It is completely absurd, and I am absolutely here for it. The contrast in scale between our two movies here is just hilarious. While the Ape Island survivors are left frantically running on foot through these dark, echoing caves from unseen, highly intelligent primate predators with only a night vision camera to guide them, our time travelers are literally using a flare gun, a steam engine, and a volcanic lightning strike to violently tear a hole in the fabric of space and time so they can get back home. So after breaking down all these absurd tropes, the highly unethical mad scientists, and the wildly mutated beasts, we really have to look at the survival mechanics we've uncovered. To make it out alive, you essentially need a mix of dumb luck, a willingness to let your arrogant team members be sacrificed, and a total ability to embrace completely unhinged escape plans. So the real question I want to leave you with in this explainer is this. If you were stranded with only the clothes on your back, which cinematic nightmare would you actually choose to face? The cold, calculated hunt of Ape Island, or the temporal chaos of Captain Nemo's cursed shores? Let that sink in next time you watch one of these. Thanks for hanging out with me to explore this one, and hey, keep your eyes on the jungle.